Your fridge is nearly empty again. How does she expect a child to grow up healthy in a house like this? She didn't say it to me. She said it to my husband, standing in my kitchen at 7:48 on a Tuesday morning, while I was still in my robe pouring my first coffee. I hadn't even had a sip yet. My name is not important. What matters is that I'm 31 years old. I live in a semi-detached in Oakville, Ontario. I have a 4-year-old daughter named Bia, and for 2.5 years my mother-in-law had a key to my house that I never gave her. My husband gave it to her. He didn't ask me. He told me afterward, the way you tell someone about a minor administrative decision, like switching internet providers. Mom has a spare now. Just in case. Just in case of what? I asked. He shrugged. Emergencies. She lives 12 minutes away, he said, as if proximity made it reasonable. The first few times, she came when we asked her to. Then she came when she happened to be nearby. Then she came when she decided Bia looked tired at Sunday dinner and wanted to check on her Monday morning. By the time I understood what was happening, it had already become normal. She had her routine. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Sometimes Saturdays. She'd let herself in, put on the kettle, and move through my house with the quiet authority of someone managing a property she owned. I told myself it was cultural. My husband's family is close. Italian-Canadian, 3 generations in Hamilton. Everyone in each other's business all the time. Loud dinners, opinions given freely, no concept of overstep. His mother had done the same thing to his grandmother, he said once. It's just how they love. I grew up differently. My parents knocked before entering my bedroom when I was a teenager. My mother still calls before coming over. The idea of walking into someone else's house unannounced makes me feel physically ill, but I loved my husband. And I wanted to be adaptable. So I kept quiet. She was never outright cruel in the beginning. That's the thing about women like my mother-in-law. They don't arrive swinging. They arrive with casserole, with a concerned expression, with questions that sound like caring but land like indictments. Is Bia getting enough iron? She looks a little pale. I noticed the diaper bag looked worn. I can pick up a new one if things are tight. Did you switch her shampoo? Her hair seems a bit dry. Every visit left me feeling slightly smaller than before she arrived. My husband would hear about it and say, "She's just trying to help," and I'd say, "I know," and I did know on one level, but I also knew what it felt like to stand in my own kitchen and feel like a guest. The comments shifted, slowly. At first they were about the house, then about Bia, then about me. You look exhausted. Are you sleeping? Are you still doing that freelance work? That must be so hard to manage with a toddler. My son works so hard. I just want to make sure he comes home to a calm environment. A calm environment, as if I were a weather system. I work from home as a graphic designer. I have clients across Toronto, a few in Vancouver, one in London. I manage my own schedule, handle my own invoicing, contribute to our mortgage, handle most of the childcare logistics because my husband travels for work 3 weeks out of every 6. I am not overwhelmed, I am busy. There is a difference. But she had decided on a story about me, and she was telling it quietly, in rooms I wasn't in. I found out about the texts by accident. I was using my husband's phone to check a restaurant reservation. He was in the shower, and a notification slid down from the top of the screen. His mother's name, a photo. My kitchen counter, taken from an angle that meant she'd been standing near the stove. A stack of B's artwork, some dishes in the drying rack, a half-full bottle of wine from the weekend. The message beneath the photo said, "I just worry sometimes. The house feels chaotic. Bia needs more structure." I didn't touch his phone. I put it down. I went back to my office and sat very still for about 10 minutes. Then I started thinking. I went back through the previous months in my head, the time she'd rearranged B's bookshelf so the books are easier for her to reach. The afternoon she'd taken it upon herself to reorganize our hall closet because, as she explained, she couldn't find the extra blankets. The day I'd come downstairs from a client call to find her in my home office, looking at something on my desk, who straightened up when she heard me coming and said she'd just been looking for a pen. She wasn't visiting. She was auditing. And she was reporting. I didn't say anything to my husband that night. I smiled at dinner. I helped Bia with her bath. I kissed everyone goodnight. And after my husband fell asleep, I lay in the dark and thought about what she was building, and why, and what I was going to do about it. The answer came to me around 2 a.m. If she wanted to document my life, I would let her. I'd just be the one holding the camera. I started the next morning. I ordered a video doorbell and 2 small indoor cameras, the kind that are perfectly legal to install in your own home in Ontario. Clearly visible, no attempt to hide them. I put one in the kitchen, one in the entryway. I didn't mention them to my mother-in-law. I didn't mention them to my husband either, not yet. I wanted footage first. Then I looked into the lock. I found a smart lock system that used an app. You could issue digital keys to specific people, set access windows, and this was the part I appreciated most. Log every entry attempt with a timestamp. Every single one. I installed it on a Wednesday. I deactivated my mother-in-law's key remotely. Her physical key still existed, but it would no longer work. The lock didn't care about her key. The lock answered to me. Then I waited. She came Thursday morning as usual. I was working in my office. I heard the familiar scrape of a key in the lock. Then nothing, then again. Then the doorbell. I took my time walking downstairs. I opened the door with a smile. Oh, I'm so sorry. I had the locks updated last week. Safety thing, Bia's been watching me unlock the door and I didn't want her figuring out the old key system. I kept my voice warm, practical, the kind of explanation a responsible mother gives. Her eyes moved past me into the hallway. I could have a copy of the new key. It's actually app-based now, I said. Super convenient. Come in. She stepped inside slowly. Her gaze went to the camera above the entryway, then to the one visible on the kitchen counter. New cameras too? Smart home system. You can see Bia on the app when she's home with the sitter. I said it pleasantly, the way I'd say anything pleasantly, and I watched her process the information with something flicker behind her eyes. Recalculation. She stayed 40 minutes, had tea, asked about Bia's preschool, left without rearranging anything, without photographing anything, without her usual walkthrough of the main floor. Progress. Over the next 3 weeks, the camera footage collected quietly in the cloud. I reviewed it each evening after Bia was in bed. I documented her entry timestamps. I cross-referenced them against the dates my husband was away for work. She came more often when he was traveling, almost every day. She'd let herself in, or try to now, stay 20-30 minutes, open the fridge, look through B's craft supplies, stand in the hallway looking at the mail on the side table. I watched her open a piece of mail addressed to me. A letter from my bank. I looked up the law. In Canada, intentionally opening or detaining someone else's mail is a criminal offense under Section 356 of the Criminal Code. I screenshotted the statute. I added it to a folder on my computer labeled simply Documentation. The folder was getting thick. I also started paying very close attention to what my husband was saying. Not accusatory, just listening. He mentioned once that his mother thought Bia seemed a bit clingy. Another time that she'd suggested we look into whether Bia might benefit from a more consistent schedule. And then, in early March, he said something that made everything click into place. Mom asked me if we'd ever thought about her taking Bia on weekends, like a regular thing. Give you a break? A break from what? I asked. He hesitated. She just thinks you're stretched thin, with the work and everything. Stretched thin. There it was. The story she'd been writing, chapter by chapter, photo by photo, for months. I wasn't overwhelmed, I wasn't unfit. But she was building a case that I was, and my husband was starting to read from the same script. I didn't argue. I said, that's kind of her to think about, and I went to put the kettle on, and I thought, she is not getting my daughter on weekends. She is not getting anything she hasn't earned the right to have. The event that changed everything happened on a Saturday in April. My mother-in-law had actually asked for once if she could come for lunch. I said yes. I cooked quiche, a salad, bread from the bakery on Lakeshore. My husband's aunt and uncle came too, visiting from Burlington. 6 people around our table, which I'd set properly, which Bia had helped me decorate with a drawing she'd made of a flower. Everything was fine until it wasn't. Halfway through the meal, my mother-in-law reached into her handbag and set her phone on the table. She turned it face up and said, very gently, I want to share something, as a family. Because I love this little girl so much, she pulled up photos. My kitchen, taken through the camera on her phone. An afternoon when I'd left Bia's lunch things on the counter to take a work call. The hallway on a day I'd been running late for pickup and dropped the stroller and diaper bag by the door. A laundry basket sitting in the living room, full of clean, unfolded clothes. I've been worried, she said, and her voice was soft, maternal, devastating. I don't think anyone's struggling on purpose, but Bia needs stability. And I think, as a family, we should talk about what we can do. My husband's aunt was looking at me with an expression somewhere between pity and embarrassment. His uncle was staring at his plate. My husband had gone very still, and I understood completely what was happening. She hadn't come for lunch. She'd come to hold a tribunal. I didn't cry. I didn't defend myself. I excused myself, said I'd forgotten something in the kitchen. Walked in there, braced my hands on the counter, and breathed. She wanted me to break. She wanted tears or anger or something she could describe later as erratic. I'd given her no reason. I would give her none now. I came back to the table. I sat down. I said, thank you for sharing that. I'd actually love to talk about it. Can we plan a time this week? I have some things I'd like to share too. She blinked. Of course, she said smoothly, but something in her face shifted. She didn't know what I had in the folder. I called her Sunday evening. I kept my voice light. I said I thought it would be good for us to sit down properly, just the two of us, and talk about Bia and family and all of it. Maybe Monday morning, if she was free, I'd love for her to come by. She said yes. She stood pleased. She thought she'd won. Monday morning, 9:15. The doorbell rang. Not the scratch of a key, the doorbell. Because the lock still answered to me. I opened the door. I had fresh coffee on. I had the folder on the kitchen table, face down. I had my laptop open to a specific folder. She came in and went to sit at the kitchen table as she always did. She glanced at the folder. I didn't explain it. I've been thinking a lot about what you said at lunch, I began. About Bia needing stability. I agree completely. She does, and I want us to be on the same page about what that looks like. I turned the folder over. Inside, printed logs from the smart lock system. Every entry attempt from the last 3 months, dates, times. A highlighted row for the day she'd arrived at 6:53 a.m. on a morning when my husband had been in Calgary. A highlighted row for 4 consecutive weekday entries during Bia's spring break week. She looked at the papers without touching them. I was just checking in. I know, Aitzai said. I also want to show you something. I turned my laptop toward her. The footage wasn't dramatic, it was mundane, which made it worse. Her walking through the hallway, her opening my mail, her going through the drawer where I keep Bia's medical cards and school forms. Her standing at my kitchen counter reading something on her phone, then photographing the room with it. She went very still. You recorded me. In my own home. Yes, I kept my voice even. Ontario law permits homeowners to install visible security cameras in their own residence. The camera in the kitchen has been there since February. The one in the entryway since January. I slid a piece of paper across to her. I also want you to know that opening mail addressed to another person is a criminal offense under the Criminal Code of Canada. I have the footage of that specifically. The color changed in her face. Not anger, not yet.
Exposure.
I was protecting my granddaughter. I know that's what you believe, I said, and I meant it. I don't think she was malicious at the core. I think she wanted control, dressed it up as love, and had never once been asked to stop. But I need you to understand what I have here, and what I'm willing to do with it. I opened to the second section of the folder. Bia's pediatric records from the last year, growth charts, developmental assessments, a letter from her preschool teacher, which I had requested in writing, framing it simply as a documentation of Bia's progress for our family records. describing her as social, curious, well-attached, flourishing. A note from my own therapist, whom I'd been seeing voluntarily for a year and a half, confirming I was engaged, stable, and proactive about my own mental health. Everything my mother-in-law had been quietly arguing against, laid out in black and white, signed by professionals. Her jaw was tight. She was still looking at the table. "There's one more thing," I said. I'd debated this part. I'd rewritten it in my head a dozen times. But I had to say it, because she needed to understand the full shape of what I'd found. "My husband mentioned a few weeks ago that you'd been speaking with him about custody arrangements, about having Bia on a more regular, independent basis." I paused. "I want you to know I'm aware of that conversation, and I want you to know that if that idea moves any further forward, in any direction, I will be speaking with a family lawyer. Not because I want to keep Bia from you, but because I will not allow anyone to remove my daughter from my care based on a case that was built by trespassing in my home and opening my mail." The room was extremely quiet. "I love Bea," she said finally, and her voice was thin. "I know you do, so do I. That's not in question." I closed the folder. "What I'm asking for is simple. You call before you come. You come when you're invited. You do not enter this house without me or my husband present. And you do not discuss my parenting with anyone, including my husband, without speaking to me directly first." I looked at her steadily. "If you can agree to that, you will always have a relationship with your granddaughter. She loves you. I'm not trying to take that from her. But this is my home, and these are my terms." She left 15 minutes later. She barely said goodbye. My husband came home that evening. I'd texted him to come home by 6 if he could. He walked in to find me at the kitchen table with the folder in front of me. I told him everything. Not with anger. I'd moved through the anger weeks ago. I told him calmly and in order, the way you'd explain a project to a colleague. The texts I'd seen on his phone, the camera footage, the mail, the lock logs, the conversation about custody. He went through about 4 different expressions in the space of 10 minutes. He didn't say, "She means well." He didn't say, "That's just mom." He sat with it. He looked at the footage. He read the lock log. He got to the line where she'd been in our house at 6:53 a.m., and he set the paper down and rubbed his face with both hands. "I didn't know about the mail," he said quietly. "I know you didn't. The custody thing, I thought she was just. I didn't think she was serious." "She saved the conversation on her phone," I said. "She'd been thinking about it for a while." He was quiet for a long time. Then, I should have said something a long time ago. About the key. About all of it. He looked at me. "I should have asked you first." That was the moment. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Just my husband in our kitchen, finally understanding the weight of what he'd let happen by not paying attention. We talked for 2 hours that night. About his mother. About our marriage. About what it meant that he'd heard all those comments, all those gentle insinuations, and had not once thought to question them. He called his mother the next morning. I wasn't in the room. I don't know exactly what he said. But she texted me that afternoon for the first time ever. Not a photo, not a concern. Just, "I'd like to have Bia over on Saturday if that works. Let me know." I texted back, "Saturday works. We'll drop her off at 2. She came to the door when we arrived. She didn't look at me with warmth. She didn't look at me with hostility either. She looked at me with something more uncomfortable than either of those things. Recognition. Like she was seeing me properly for the first time and wasn't entirely sure she liked what she saw. I can live with that. It's been 4 months. She books visits through my husband now. She hasn't come unannounced once. When she comes to the house, she knocks, actually knocks, and waits. Last month she brought Bia a little craft kit and asked me, directly, if I had any rules about glitter. I said I did. She laughed, which surprised me. It wasn't warm exactly, but it was something. My husband and I see a couples counselor every other Wednesday evening. Not because we're in crisis, we're not, but because I needed him to understand how 4 years of small silences accumulate, and he needed space to work out why he'd let them. It's slow. It's honest. It's better. Bia asked me last week why Grandma knocks now when she used to just come in. I told her that sometimes people learn new ways of showing love. She accepted that completely, the way 4-year-olds accept most things, and went back to her coloring book. I stood in my kitchen, my home, my life, and for the first time in a very long time, the house felt exactly like mine.